The cold woke Ryan before the sun did. His blanket was thin. The concrete beneath him felt harder than usual. A train rattled somewhere above him. The sound rolled through the steel beams and settled into his bones. He opened his eyes and stared at the gray underside of the bridge. Chicago. Another morning. Another day nobody was waiting for him. His stomach hurt. Not sharp pain, the dull kind. The kind that stays so long it starts feeling normal. He sat up slowly and rubbed his hands together. The air smelled like wet concrete and old motor oil. A few feet away, his backpack leaned against a pillar. Everything he owned fit inside it. 3 shirts, 1 notebook, a crocked phone, a charger, a photo, and a dream he refused to let die. Ryan Parker was 41 years old. Most people who passed him on the sidewalk thought he was older. Life had a way of doing that. He stood and stretched. Then he started his morning ritual. 20 push-ups, every day. Rain, snow, heat, didn't matter. He told himself that if he stopped doing that, he'd stop being himself. Some days it was the only promise he kept. Cars rushed overhead. People headed towards jobs, towards offices, towards lives that made sense. Ryan finished the last push-up and sat back. For a moment, he watched the city wake up. He didn't know it yet, but people would someday tell his story. Not because he became rich, because he refused to stay broken. Back then, nobody saw any of that. They saw another homeless man under a bridge. Nothing more. He packed his blanket, checked his phone, 8% battery, no new messages. That part always hurt. Years earlier, his phone never stopped ringing. Now entire weeks passed in silence. He slipped the phone away and started walking. The wind cut through his jacket. Chicago winters had a way of finding every opening. The shelter downtown wouldn't serve breakfast for another hour. He knew the route by memory. He knew every crocked sidewalk, every alley, every place security guards told him to leave, every corner where people avoided eye contact. That knowledge had become its own kind of map. He hated that, but it was true. A woman handed him a paper cup near a church. Fresh coffee. Nothing else. No speech. No pity. Just coffee. "Thank you," Ryan said. She smiled. "Stay warm." Then she kept walking. He held the cup carefully. The heat felt good. Small kindnesses mattered more than people realized. Sometimes they were enough to get through another day. The shelter smelled like bleach and wet clothes. The line already stretched outside. Ryan joined it. A man named Curtis stood ahead of him. Curtis had been homeless almost 10 years. Nobody knew his exact age, not even Curtis. "Morning," Curtis said. "Morning. You hear about that dishwasher job?" Ryan nodded. "I applied." "They call?" Ryan laughed softly. "No." Curtis nodded. That answer wasn't surprising. Nothing came easy anymore. Inside, volunteers served eggs and toast. Ryan ate slowly. Every bite counted. Across the room, a television played morning news. People talked about stock prices, housing markets, vacation travel. It felt like another planet. Ryan remembered when those things mattered to him, before everything fell apart, before that Tuesday. He thought about it almost every day, the exact moment, the exact phone call, the exact sound of his life breaking. Years earlier, Ryan had owned a small house on the south side. Nothing fancy, but it was his. He worked as a restaurant manager, long hours, decent pay. He coached his son's baseball team, paid bills on time, bought groceries every Saturday. Normal life, the kind people never think about losing. Then his mother got sick, cancer, fast, cruel. The hospital visits started, the costs started, the stress started. Ryan drove her everywhere, missed work often, used savings, then used credit cards, then borrowed money. For a while, he believed he could hold everything together. Most people do. The trouble is, life rarely asks permission before getting worse. His mother died on a rainy Thursday. Ryan never really recovered. He kept moving, but something inside him stayed buried with her. 6 months later, the restaurant chain got bought. Corporate changes followed. Staff cuts followed that. Ryan sat in an office on a Tuesday afternoon. A man he'd known only 3 weeks handed him papers. "I'm sorry. That was it? 20 years of work."
Gone in 5 minutes. Ryan remembered walking outside, the smell of hot asphalt, the traffic noise, the feeling that everyone else kept moving while his world stopped. He thought he'd find another job quickly. He was wrong. Months passed, interviews happened, nothing stuck. Savings disappeared, bills grew teeth. The mortgage company called daily, credit cards filled up. His marriage strained under the pressure, then snapped. His wife left, his son moved with her. Ryan didn't blame either of them. That almost made it hurt more. The house went next. He watched strangers carry furniture away. Everything he'd built left piece by piece. A couch, a table, a bed, a life. Then the door closed. That was 3 years ago. The memory still felt fresh. Some wounds stay open. After breakfast, Ryan walked toward the public library. The library saved him more times than he could count. Heat in winter, air conditioning in summer, internet, bathrooms, power outlets, hope. He sat at a computer and opened job websites. Same routine, every day. Application after application. Restaurant jobs, warehouse jobs, cleaning jobs, anything. Most never answered. Some rejected him. Others disappeared completely. The gap on his resume scared employers. People looked at it and imagined the worst. Few asked what really happened. By noon, his eyes hurt. He closed the screen. A librarian named Denise walked by. She knew him. Not well, but enough. "How's the search today?" she asked. Ryan shrugged. "Still searching," Denise smiled. "Keep showing up." Simple words, but he remembered them later. Sometimes people don't need solutions. They need witnesses, someone who sees them trying. Outside the library, snow started falling. Small flakes, steady. Ryan pulled up his hood. His stomach tightened. Winter nights were dangerous, especially when shelter beds filled up. He headed toward a church that served soup. The line stretched around the block. Nobody complained. Everyone understood. The smell reached the sidewalk. Chicken soup, fresh bread. Ryan hadn't realized how hungry he was. Inside, he sat beside a young man named Jake, maybe 19, maybe 20. Jake had aged out of foster care. Now he bounced between shelters. "Got any luck?" Jake asked. Ryan shook his head. "You?" Jake laughed. "If I did, I wouldn't be here." The laugh faded quickly. That happened a lot. People laughed because the truth hurt. Ryan looked around the room. Different faces, same struggle. Veterans, single mothers, older men, young kids. People assumed homelessness looked one way. It didn't. That was one of the biggest lies. A volunteer refilled Ryan's soup. He thanked her. She nodded. Nobody made speeches. Nobody asked for explanations. Just soup, just dignity. The afternoon faded. The temperature dropped. Ryan spent the evening walking. Movement helped. Standing still made the cold worse. Store windows glowed with warm light. Families shopped. Couples laughed. Christmas decorations already filled displays. The holiday season was coming. Ryan dreaded it. Holidays magnified everything missing. He passed his sporting goods store. A baseball glove sat in the window. For a second, he stopped. His son used to love baseball. Ryan still called every Thursday. That was another promise. No matter how bad life got, every Thursday. Tonight was Thursday. He checked his battery. 3%. Enough. Maybe. He sat outside a train station and made the call. The phone rang, then answered. "Dad?" Ryan smiled immediately. That voice always did it. "Hey, buddy." His son Ethan was 14 now, growing fast. Ryan missed too much. They talked about school, baseball, homework, normal things. Ryan loved normal things. Normal things felt precious now. "You okay?" Ethan asked. Ryan looked across the street, at people hurrying home, at snow gathering near the curb, at a city that barely noticed him. "Yeah," Ryan said, "I'm okay." It wasn't completely true, but it wasn't completely false either. Ethan believed him. Ryan wanted to keep it that way. Before hanging up, Ethan said something that stayed with him. "You'll figure it out, Dad." Ryan swallowed hard.
I hope so. No, you will. Then the call ended. Ryan stared at the dark screen. Battery dead. But the words stayed alive. You will. He carried them into the night. The shelter was full. No beds left. That happened often. Ryan walked for another hour, then found space beneath the bridge again.
The wind howled through the steel. He wrapped himself in the blanket. Above him, headlights crossed the roadway, one after another, endless. He opened his notebook. The pages were worn, corners bent, the cover nearly gone. Every night he wrote something, no matter what. One page, one thought, one reason to keep going. Tonight he wrote 3 words, "Don't quit yet." Then he closed it. Snow drifted sideways. The cold deepened. Ryan closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly. The next morning looked a lot like the last. Then another. Then another. Weeks passed. Applications, rejections, long walks, shelter lines, soup kitchens, library computers. The same cycle. The same fight. Sometimes hope felt strong. Sometimes it felt borrowed. One afternoon, a restaurant posted a hiring notice. Dishwasher needed. Immediate opening. Ryan applied immediately. The manager barely looked up. Experience? Restaurant management. The manager laughed. We need dishwashers. I'll wash dishes. The manager finally looked at him. Ryan held the eye contact. No pride, no shame, just honesty. When can you start? The manager asked. Ryan blinked. He almost didn't believe it. Today. The restaurant sat in a crowded neighborhood. Busy, loud, fast. The kitchen smelled like grease and garlic. The dish station sat in the back corner. Steam filled the air. Ryan worked until his arms hurt, then worked more. He didn't complain. At closing time, the manager handed him a schedule. 3 shifts next week. Not much, but something. Ryan walked outside carrying a paper-bagged meal. The city lights reflected off wet pavement. For the first time in months, he felt movement. Small, fragile, real. Still, he knew better than to celebrate. One job didn't fix everything. He still had nowhere permanent to sleep, still had debt, still had a broken life, still had years of damage behind him. But he also had something new, a door, just barely open. And every night after work, he noticed something. The owner of the restaurant stayed late, always, watching, listening, paying attention to details others missed. Ryan found himself studying him too, not out of envy, out of curiosity. He watched how decisions got made, how problems got solved, how people followed leadership. Old instincts returned, skills he thought were gone. One evening, the owner paused beside the dish station, just for a second, long enough to notice Ryan's notebook sitting nearby, long enough to ask one simple question. What are you writing in there every night? Ryan looked up. The answer came easy. The conversation that followed would change everything. He just didn't know it yet. What are you writing in there every night? Ryan looked up from the sink. Steam drifted between them. Plates rattled somewhere behind him. The dinner rush had finally ended. He wiped his hands on a towel. Just thoughts, he said. The owner nodded. What kind of thoughts? Ryan hesitated. The notebook felt private, maybe too private.
But something about the question felt real, not polite, not forced, real. Mostly reminders. The owner leaned against a counter. Like what? Ryan opened the notebook. He flipped through worn pages. Short sentences filled almost every sheet. Keep showing up. Stay useful. Don't quit yet. One good day can change everything. The owner looked at him. You write these every day? Ryan nodded. Every night. The owner smiled slightly. Then he walked away. That was it. No speech, no life lesson, nothing dramatic. Still, Ryan thought about it all night. The next week brought more shifts, then another week, then another. Ryan arrived early every time, stayed late whenever asked. He learned names, helped wherever needed. He washed dishes, took out trash, cleaned floors, organized shelves, fixed small problems before anyone noticed them. Old management habits returned naturally. One night, a cook called out sick. The kitchen fell behind. Orders piled up. Stress filled the room. Ryan stepped forward. I can help. The kitchen manager looked doubtful. You know the line? I used to run one. The manager stared at him, then pointed. Prove it. Ryan jumped in. His hands remembered everything, the rhythm, the timing, the pressure. For 4 straight hours he worked beside the cooks. No mistakes, no panic, no complaints. When the rush ended, the kitchen was silent. A young cook named Tyler shook his head. Dude. Ryan laughed. What? Why are you washing dishes?
Ryan didn't know how to answer. Life wasn't something that fit inside one sentence. The next morning, the owner called him into the office. Ryan immediately worried. People living on the edge always expected bad news first. Did I do something wrong? The owner smiled. No. Ryan relaxed slightly. The owner slid a paper across the desk. Assistant kitchen supervisor. A small promotion, a small raise. Not much, but enough to matter. Ryan stared at it. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. The owner noticed. You okay? Ryan nodded slowly. Yeah, but his voice croaked. The truth was he wasn't okay. He was overwhelmed. There was a difference. He hadn't received good news in years. Not real good news. Not the kind that changed things. The owner extended his hand. Ryan shook it, then stepped outside. Cold air hit his face. Cars rolled past. People hurried along sidewalks. Nobody knew what had happened. Nobody knew a man had just gotten his first real break. Ryan sat on a bench, then cried quietly. Not because he was sad, because he had forgotten what hope felt like. That night he called Ethan. Guess what? What? I got promoted. Silence. Then cheering. Actual cheering. Ryan laughed. Ethan laughed. For a few minutes, everything felt normal again. The call ended. Ryan sat staring at the phone. He saved the voicemail Ethan left afterward. He still has it. The promotion helped, but it didn't solve everything. Life rarely works that way. He still slept at shelters. Still carried the backpack. Still worried constantly. Still counted every dollar. Still watched his bank account like a man watching a leaking boat. Money came in, then disappeared. Bus fare, laundry, food, phone bill. Small expenses felt enormous. One unexpected problem could ruin everything. Then winter arrived for real. Chicago turned brutal. Wind blasted through streets. Snow buried sidewalks. The kind of cold that made people walk faster. The kind that reached inside coats. One night, Ryan left work during a storm. The city looked white. Streetlights glowed through blowing snow. His shelter was full again. No beds, no room, nothing. The worker behind the desk knew him. She looked frustrated. I'm sorry, Ryan. It's okay. No, it isn't. Ryan appreciated that answer. Sometimes honesty felt kinder than comfort. He walked through the storm. His face burned from the cold. His fingers hurt. He found a bus stop and sat down. For a moment he thought about quitting. Not life, just the fight. The endless fight. The applications, the rejection, the uncertainty, the exhaustion. He felt tired in places sleep couldn't fix. Everyone knows that feeling. Not homelessness, not poverty, just exhaustion. The moment when carrying everything feels impossible. The moment when hope feels heavier than despair. Ryan sat there staring at snow. A young woman approached. She carried 2 grocery bags. She noticed him, stopped, reached into one bag, pulled out gloves. Take these. Ryan looked surprised. I can't. You can. She handed them over, then continued walking. That was all. No photos, no social media post, no speech, just gloves. Ryan wore them for 2 winters. He never forgot her. The months continued. Work grew steadier. The owner trusted him more. Employees started asking questions, not because he was management, because he listened. One afternoon, a dishwasher named Marcus nearly quit. 19 years old, angry, frustrated, certain nobody cared. Ryan found him outside. You leaving? Maybe. Why? Marcus kicked a curb. Doesn't matter. Ryan nodded, then sat beside him. Neither spoke for a minute. Traffic hummed nearby. Finally, Ryan said something. I used to think nobody cared. Marcus looked at him. You still think that? Ryan glanced toward the restaurant. No. Marcus stayed. Months later, he would tell Ryan that conversation changed his life.
Ryan never mentioned it again. Some moments don't need witnesses. Spring arrived, snow melted, the city breathed again. Ryan finally saved enough money for a tiny room. One room, shared bathroom, old building, peeling paint, thin walls. Perfect. The landlord handed him keys. Ryan stood alone inside. A bed, a lamp, a window. Nothing else. Still, it felt like a mansion. He sat on the mattress. The room smelled like fresh paint. Sunlight crossed the floor. For the first time in 3 years, he locked a door behind him. For the first time in 3 years, he knew where he would sleep.
That night, he didn't sleep much. He kept waking up, looking around, making sure it was real. Some dreams arrive quietly. The next morning, he made coffee in a cheap machine. The smell filled the room. Ryan smiled. It felt like winning the lottery. But another challenge waited. His credit was destroyed. Debt remained. His future still looked uncertain. Then opportunity appeared. Not once, 3 separate times, and each one nearly worked. The first came through a food truck startup. A local businessman wanted managers. Ryan interviewed. The meeting went well, really well. For 2 weeks, he expected a call. Then the company folded before opening. Gone, just like that. The second came through a hotel chain, restaurant supervisor position, better pay, benefits, stability. Ryan reached the final interview, then lost the job to someone else. He sat in the library afterwards, staring at the rejection email. The old pain returned. The familiar voice. Maybe this is as far as you go. Maybe this is enough. Maybe this is all there is. That voice sounded convincing. It usually did. But Ryan knew something now. The voice wasn't always right. The third opportunity came from a community college, night classes, business certification, affordable, possible. Ryan enrolled. Work all day, classes all night, homework after midnight, sleep when possible, repeat. The schedule nearly broke him, but he kept going. The classroom smelled like dry markers and old textbooks. Most students were younger. Ryan didn't care. He sat in the front row, asked questions, took notes, learned everything. People noticed, including one professor, Professor Bennett, former restaurant executive, sharp eyes, straight answers. One evening after class, she stopped Ryan. "You've managed before." Ryan nodded. "Years ago." "I can tell." Ryan smiled. "Thanks." She studied him, then asked a question nobody else had asked. "What do you actually want?" Ryan opened his mouth, then stopped. Nobody had asked that in years. Not what job he wanted, not what bills he owed, not where he slept. What he wanted. The answer surprised even him. "I want ownership." Professor Bennett raised an eyebrow. "Ownership?" Ryan nodded. "Someday." The words sounded ridiculous. A former homeless dishwasher talking about ownership. Still, he couldn't take them back, because they were true. Professor Bennett smiled. "Good." Ryan blinked. "Good?" Most people dream too small. Then she walked away. Ryan sat alone in the classroom. Ownership. The word stayed with him. Every shift, every class, every morning, every night. Ownership. Months passed. He graduated near the top of the program. The certificate wasn't magic, but it opened doors. More importantly, it changed how he saw himself. That mattered. People talk about success like it's money. Sometimes success starts earlier. Sometimes it starts the moment a person believes they're worth investing in. Ryan was beginning to believe that again. The restaurant owner noticed the changes. Everyone did. Ryan suggested improvements, reduced waste, improved schedules, organized inventory. Small changes, big results. One evening, the owner called him into the office again. The same office, the same desk, but a different feeling. Ryan sat down. The owner folded his hands. "I've been watching you." Ryan laughed. "That sounds scary." The owner smiled. "It shouldn't." Then he slid several documents across the desk. Ryan looked down. Numbers, reports, financial statements, plans. "What is this?" The owner leaned back. "This restaurant needs another partner." Ryan froze. The room suddenly felt quiet. Outside, he could hear dishes clinking, voices laughing, life continuing. But inside the office, everything stopped. Ryan looked up slowly. The owner wasn't joking, and what came next would force Ryan to make the biggest decision since losing everything.
Ryan stared at the papers. For a moment, he thought he misunderstood. Partnership, ownership, those words belonged to other people. People with savings, people with houses, people who never slept under bridges. Not people like him. The owner watched quietly. His name was Mike. Ryan had worked beside him for nearly 2 years. Mike knew most of the story by then. Not all of it, but enough. "You serious?" Ryan asked. Mike nodded. "Very." Ryan looked down again. His hands trembled slightly. "I don't have money." "I know. I don't have much credit." "I know that too." Ryan leaned back. The old fear returned. Whenever something good appeared, fear showed up first. He had been disappointed too many times. Hope had become dangerous. Mike folded his arms. "I'm not offering charity." Ryan looked up. "Then what are you offering?" "A chance." Silence filled the room. Mike continued. "You already act like an owner." Ryan didn't answer. "You care when things break." Mike pointed toward the kitchen. "You solve problems nobody asks you to solve." He pointed toward the dining room. "The staff trusts you." Then he pointed toward Ryan's notebook. "And you never stopped believing in tomorrow." Ryan looked away. Praise always made him uncomfortable, especially praise he felt he hadn't earned. Mike slid another page forward. "This isn't free." Ryan nodded. "Good." He trusted that more. "You'll buy in slowly." Mike explained the numbers, the structure, the timeline, the responsibilities. It would take years. Nothing easy, nothing guaranteed, but possible. For the first time, possible. Ryan left the office carrying the documents. The city felt different that night, not because anything had changed, because something might. He walked home slowly. His room looked the same lamp, the same bed, the same cracked mirror. Yet somehow everything felt larger. Possibility does that. He sat on the mattress and read every page, then read them again. Sleep never came. The next morning he called Ethan. His son answered immediately. "Dad? Hey, buddy."
"You sound weird," Ryan laughed. "Weird good. What happened?" Ryan explained everything. Every detail, every number, every risk. The phone went quiet. Then Ethan said something Ryan never forgot. "I knew it." Ryan smiled. "Knew what?" "You'd get there." Ryan closed his eyes. For a second, he couldn't speak. Some people stop believing in you. Some never do. The difference can save a life. Ryan accepted the offer. The next years became the hardest of his life, and the best, because now every sacrifice had direction. He worked mornings, managed afternoons, handled paperwork at night, studied finances, studied inventory, studied labor costs, studied everything. Ownership wasn't glamorous. It was responsibility. The restaurant became his classroom. Every mistake taught something, and there were mistakes, lots of them. One summer, a supplier failed. Food costs exploded. Profits dropped. Everyone panicked. Ryan spent weeks finding alternatives. Another year, a plumbing disaster closed the kitchen. 3 days without business. Thousands lost. Another time, several employees quit during the same month. The dining room nearly collapsed under the pressure. Every challenge taught him something new. The old Ryan might have broken. This Ryan didn't. Homelessness had changed him. Not in the way people expected. It had taught him endurance. When you've survived nights outside in Chicago winters, business problems feel different. Still serious, just different.
3 years later, Ryan officially became a minority partner. The paperwork happened on a rainy afternoon. Nothing dramatic. No television cameras, no celebration. Just signatures, pens moving across paper. When it finished, Mike extended his hand. "Congratulations." Ryan stared at the document. Partner. The word looked unreal. A memory flashed suddenly. The bridge, the blanket, the notebook, the hunger, the cold, the loneliness. Then the memory faded. He shook Mike's hand. Outside, rain tapped against windows. Inside, a new chapter quietly began. The news spread through the staff. People cheered. Marcus nearly tackled him with a hug. Tyler bought pizza. Several employees cried. Ryan laughed at all of them, then secretly cried in the office. Not because of the partnership, because he realized how many people had carried him. Nobody climbs alone. That truth became clearer every year. Success continued growing, slowly, steadily.
The restaurant expanded, then opened a second location, then a third. Ryan became known across the neighborhood, not as a businessman, as a leader. People came to him for advice, jobs, second chances, sometimes just someone to listen. He hired people others ignored, people with gaps on resumes, people rebuilding lives, people fresh out of shelters, people fresh out of mistakes. Not everyone succeeded. Some disappeared, some quit, some relapsed into old problems. Ryan understood, because healing isn't a straight road, but enough succeeded to matter.
One afternoon, a young applicant entered his office, nervous, thin, tired. Ryan recognized the look immediately, the look of someone carrying too much. The young man sat down. Ryan noticed the backpack, the worn shoes, the exhaustion behind his eyes. It felt familiar, painfully familiar. The interview lasted 15 minutes. At the end, Ryan hired him. No hesitation. The young man looked stunned. Really? Ryan smiled. Really? Why? Ryan thought about answering, then decided on the truth. Because somebody once hired me. The young man nodded. He understood. Some lessons need only one sentence. Years passed. Ethan graduated high school. Ryan sat in the crowd watching. The gym smelled like polished floors. Parents filled the seats. Cameras flashed. Names echoed through speakers. Then Ethan crossed the stage. Ryan stood and cheered louder than anyone. People turned and laughed. He didn't care. He had missed too much already. Afterward, Ethan hugged him, hard. Neither said much. Neither needed to. Thanksgiving returned. Christmas returned. New Year's returned. But now they felt different. Not because life was perfect, because Ryan wasn't alone anymore. The holidays no longer magnified absence. They celebrated presence. One Christmas Eve, he hosted dinner. Employees came, friends came, neighbors came, people from every chapter of his life. The apartment smelled like turkey and gravy. Football played on television. Laughter filled every room. Ryan stepped into the kitchen alone for a moment. Just one moment. He looked around, then remembered another Christmas. A shelter, plastic trays, thin blankets, the sound of coughing through the night, the feeling of pretending everything was fine. Tears filled his eyes. Not sadness, gratitude. The difference mattered. A voice interrupted him. "You okay?" It was Mike, older now, gray hair showing. Ryan smiled. "Yeah." Mike looked around the crowded apartment. "You built something good." Ryan shook his head. "We built it." Mike nodded. Then they returned to the party. Years later, Ryan bought a house. Not huge, not fancy, but his, again. The day he received the keys, he sat alone inside. Sunlight crossed the living room floor. Dust floated through the air. The house smelled new. Ryan walked room to room slowly, touching walls, opening doors, looking out windows, taking it all in. Then he found himself standing before a mirror, a simple mirror near the hallway. He stared at his reflection, longer than usual. Gray touched his hair now. Lines marked his face. Life had left evidence. But something else had returned. Someone else. The man staring back looked familiar, not because he was successful, because he looked whole. For years, Ryan had avoided mirrors. Homelessness had taken more than money. It had taken identity. The man in the reflection during those years felt like a stranger. Now he recognized himself again. That surprised him more than the house. More than the business. More than the money. Dignity had returned quietly. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one step at a time. Years later, a local newspaper wrote about him. The former homeless dishwasher turned restaurant owner. People loved stories like that. Reporters called, podcasts called, community groups invited him to speak. Ryan accepted some invitations, declined others, but whenever someone asked his secret, his answer stayed the same. There wasn't one. No secret, no shortcut, no magic moment. Just thousands of ordinary choices. Show up, learn, try again. Show up tomorrow, then show up the day after that. Most people wanted a more exciting answer. Ryan never gave one, because it wouldn't be true. One evening after closing, he walked through the original restaurant, the first one, the place where everything changed. Chairs sat upside down on tables. Lights glowed softly. The kitchen was quiet. The dish station stood empty.
Ryan stopped there. For a long moment, he simply looked. Steam no longer filled the air, but he could still see it, still hear it, still feel it. He remembered standing there with soaked sleeves, remembered aching feet, remembered fear, remembered hope. The notebook still existed. He kept it in his office. Every page, every reminder, every promise. That night, he opened it again. The first pages looked rough, desperate, fragile. The handwriting shook. The final pages looked different, steady, confident. But one thing never changed.
Keep going. Ryan smiled, then closed the notebook. Outside, the city moved beneath the evening sky. Cars crossed streets. People hurried home. Some celebrated victories. Some carried heartbreak. Some felt lost. Some felt hopeful. Most carried both. Because that's what being human means. Life changes. Fortunes change. Addresses change. Jobs change. But every person carries invisible battles. Every person carries fears they rarely say out loud. Every person knows what it feels like to wonder if tomorrow will be better. Ryan's story was never really about homelessness. It was about refusing to let one chapter become the whole book. It was about dignity surviving hard seasons. It was about people who offered coffee, people who offered gloves, people who offered jobs, people who offered belief. Most of all, it was about what happens when someone keeps moving forward after every reason to stop. Years earlier, nobody noticed the silent dishwasher working in the back. Nobody noticed him studying ownership while scrubbing plates. Nobody noticed him rebuilding himself one small decision at a time. But that was never the point. The point was becoming the person he wanted to be, whether anyone noticed or not. Because the strongest changes often happen where nobody is watching. Because dignity can survive places success cannot. Because hope grows best when it has no audience. And because every person is carrying more strength than they know until life asks them to prove it. Never underestimate the power of showing up one more time. The story is now complete.